LGB. 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 LGB.
They say LGB everywhere I go. LGB. What it means, I don't know. LGB. Whatever it is. LGB. Kamala, help me, please. Please.
Alrighty then.
Thank you. LGB.
That's let's go, Brandon, right?
LGB.
This means let's go, Brandon.
No. LGB.
Sounds like let's go, Brandon, I guess.
LGB. All right. Let's go, Brandon.
I am Cornholio.
Chant LGB. Right wing and left wing. LGB. Go, you know the thing. LGB. If you don't sing that back. LGB. And you ain't black. LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
LGB.
Let's go, Brandon.
FJB. Let's go, Brandon.
I'm Joe Biden, and I
Forgot
this message.
Greetings, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Reading Epic Threads. I'm your host, Patrick Gunnels, joining you from Houston, Texas, this March 28th, 2024 at 10:27 a.m. Central Daylight Time, and I'm going to begin today's show with a piece I've been looking forward to called The Werewolf Game, Agents from Russia, which is part 2 of the Werewolf Game series by American Hypnotist. I don't know if this is the final part of the series, but the concept of the werewolf game is really exciting. The concept of understanding psychopathy is really important to our continued success in this strange war. So we're going to begin with that in just a minute. Before we get started, I'm just blown away at how exciting this Epic Minerals product is. Guys, Epic Minerals is my new brand, and the product is called Zeolite Extra. The manufacturer is a Badlander, which you should know, but this contains zeolite plus humic and fulvic acid. The zeolite binds to heavy metals and other toxins, causing them to pass through your system, harmlessly as waste products. And then the humic and fulvic acid allow you to remineralize your tissues. And the results, health-wise, for me, after about a week and a half of using it, the results health-wise have been startling. For my wife, Ashley, it has been clarity of mind. And for me, it has been vitality in certain ways that I'm not going to describe other than to say they sure are exciting and make me feel extremely youthful, if you get my drift. 5 sprays in the mouth in the morning, and I'm doing 5 sprays in the mouth at night now. I'm increasing my dosage. Your world is toxic. It contains heavy metals in the air that you breathe, in the water you drink, in the food that you eat, in the injections that go into your arm if you did that. And guys, those heavy metals can be removed using zeolite, specifically clinoptilolite. So check it out at epicminerals.net. Use promo code Shapiro to pry $1 from my grasping hands. Your body will thank you. Now, without further ado, let us begin. From badlands.substack.com, The Werewolf Game, Agents from Russia, a new take on the Russia-Ukraine war, by American Hypnotist. Greetings, friends and patriots. Welcome to the second edition of The Werewolf Game. This article, though thematically connected to my previous article on the werewolf game, can stand on its own. I had intended to write only 2 articles on this subject. Alas, there is just too much information here that needs to be discussed for that to be feasible. A 3rd article will follow this one. Whether it sounds plausible or not, the fact of the matter is that werewolf, vampire, and zombie symbolism hold many keys to understanding the mindset of the deep state death cult. This cult is indeed a predator class that goes to great lengths to visit untold violence and torture upon innocent people. Pardon my candor, but if you want to be more than mere food for anything that eats you, then the onus is on you to become aware of the predators in your midst, and there are many. One of my central theses in this Werewolf game article series is that the Russia-Ukraine war may, in fact, have its roots in an ancient battle between a werewolf-themed death cult and another positive but lost civilization. I believe the Trump and Kennedy families may be royal descendants of this positive, read this as good guys, civilization, and I furthermore believe that the phrase Russian agent may, in fact, be a veiled reference to said positive civilization. Crazy as all that sounds, the moment I began pursuing this thesis, an avalanche of data fell into my lap, like finding that one thread that unravels the sweater, or at least large chunks of it. Now, let's be mindful here that any given comm could mean a number of different things. When I say that Russian agent could be a reference to a positive civilization, for example, I don't necessarily mean to imply that modern-day Russia is the savior of humanity currently. I believe the comm is more about geography than anything else. Fret not, for this will all make sense very soon. In the last article, we delved into the subjects of information warfare, key truths about psychopathy, and introduced the Werewolf game, a game that was invented by a Russian sociology student, or so we're told, that happens to be an excellent teaching tool regarding the nature of information warfare. This piece will take things in a very surprising direction from there. Fairy tales as a form of disclosure. There once was a time when fairy tales were used as teaching tools to warn people about psychopathic personality types and the cults that such types create. Nowadays, many stories are told to accomplish the very opposite effect. The misunderstood psychopath has become a trope in mainstream entertainment. Alas, stories are the vehicles upon which morals, values, and real-life lessons are spread. Everyone has heard of the concept of a wolf in sheep's clothing. Most people think this is a metaphor. But ongoing research into ancient cults has caused me to reconsider how metaphorical this concept truly is. You see, going all the way back to 3000 to 2000 BC, there existed a cult that had its home base right where Ukraine stands today, and which used the wolf as its main theme. This cult was known by many names, including but not limited to the Koryos and the Aryans, due to worshipping a deity named Ares, which looks an awful lot like the words Aryan and Aries, if I do say so myself. It appears they share certain pieces of language in common with many other nations, such as the Etruscans and the Scythians, although traces of their influence can be found all over the world, including places as remote as the so-called undiscovered American continent. From ancient times up until the year 1000 AD, the Koryos would ride into Asia and Europe, marauding their more peaceful agrarian neighbors. Like many psychopathic types, they didn't produce anything themselves, instead preferring to do drugs for half the year in between raids. They'd go into a berserk trance under the full moon and wore wolf pelts on their heads as they pillaged everything and everyone around them. It would be a mistake to think that this cult disappeared centuries ago. Among other places, the symbolism of this cult can be seen in the coat of arms for the Fabian Society, a prominent British socialist organization that officially formed in 1900 and that had a hand in the formation of the League of Nations, 1919. Their membership included Walter Lippmann, whose 1927 book, Public Opinion, goes into detail regarding the elite plans to use democracy as a smokescreen to control mentally the masses while convincing the masses that they are free. With that in mind, let's look at the Fabian Society's coat of arms. For those of you just listening, it's a coat of arms with a wolf that has the pelt of a sheep strapped to its back, with the letter F on the left and S on the right. Rather blatant, isn't it? As we discussed in the previous article, psychopaths are two-faced. That is to say, they wear a mask to blend in with normal society. Indeed, most of us would become very skilled actors if we practiced the art of manipulation all day, every day, the way psychopaths do. The symbolism here is important because when we are dealing with the dark occult practicing elites, we are indeed dealing with people who keep their inner monster hidden and who also engage in ritualistic cult violence. Is it not feasible that the fairy tales such as Little Red Riding Hood and the Three Little Pigs were invented to warn the indigenous Europeans of this cult? Indeed, how many ancient stories are there in which the devouring or opposing force is portrayed as a wolf? The wolf cult and Khazaria. The genesis of this wolf cult appears to be smack dab in the area where Ukraine and Russia are currently fighting, as well as much of Eastern Europe. The Carpathian Mountains were said to be a key base of theirs at one point. The ancient kingdom of Khazaria was also said to hail from this area, and there's a tremendous amount of evidence that Khazaria and the werewolf cult are deeply connected. Khazaria was said to have pioneered horseback warfare, traveling in nomadic tribes, marauding nearby villages. Looking at the word Tartaria and Khazaria, we can see that the phoneme Aries resembles the suffixes of these names, as in Tart, Aria, and Khaz, Aria. Today, you have Bulg, Aria, in the same general area. Did the Aryan wolf cult force their language on nearby peoples? If indeed the wolf cult and Khazaria are closely related, then this might explain why Roman leaders were called Caesar, which looks rather like Kaiser, and Khazar. Fact of the matter is, the mythical founder of Rome, Romulus, was said to have been suckled by a she-wolf alongside his twin Remus, whom he killed. Publications such as Veterans Today and Ben Fulford have put a spotlight on the Khazarian mafia since at least 2015. For the record, I don't personally trust either of those publications per se. However, the point remains that they appear to have introduced the phrase Khazarian mafia into common conspiracy parlance. I recall learning that term a long time ago, thanks to those publications. It's almost as if a great deal of conspiracy literature has been disseminated to guide the public's awakening about the significance of this part of the world. Let it never be forgotten that all professional-grade disinfo contains some truth. I recommend reading the book Wicked Teeth, The Secret History of Werewolves, to get a detailed history on this subject. The Horse, the Wheel, and Language is also another fantastic resource on the influence of the wolf cult. For our purposes in this article, the above introduction to this cult will suffice. Remember that lost, positive civilization I mentioned earlier? Let's talk about that now. The plot thickens. Enter Tartaria. Recently, a deluge of information regarding a lost civilization known as Tartaria has flooded the internet, and many researchers tell us that the heart of Tartaria was the same general region of the world from whence the werewolf cult emerged. As with any subject, there are many different schools of thought regarding what Tartaria may or may not have been. I'm not here to endorse or debunk any particular version of popular Tartarian lore. What I do find noteworthy is how huge of a topic it became in recent years. The sudden explosion of popularity in a given subject often indicates social engineering of some kind or another. As always, the question is, why? You see, I've seen well-established YouTubers work years to generate six-figure view counts on their videos. Many of these folks have their content suppressed. Meanwhile, channels that discuss things like Flat Earth and Tartaria regularly pull six-figure view counts, even if they were established recently. Is it not fascinating that you can talk about Flat Earth and Tartaria, but not Q? There are certain aspects of Tartarian lore that I suspect are true. For example, it does indeed appear to me that there was a global civilization that got erased from the history books, and it seems very likely to me that the architecture for which they were famous really did exist and really was destroyed in order to blind us all to the past. The best evidence for the existence of a lost positive civilization are the old world fairs of the 1800s, which boasted extraordinary architecture, the likes of which the world has barely seen since. It's eminently reasonable to hypothesize that these world fairs may have been ancient Tartarian cities. For ease of comprehension, the terms lost, positive civilization, and Tartaria mean the same thing in the context of this article. It is to the world's fairs that we now turn. A catalog of lost architecture. According to mainstream history, the most photographed event of the 1800s was the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. We are told that this fair was constructed in a couple short years, given that 1891 was the year that Congress passed an act to hold the big fair in Chicago, leaving only a couple short years for the whole thing to be constructed. The fairground was 690 acres wide, featuring dozens of enormous ornate buildings that have to be seen to be believed. Take note of two things in the pictures immediately below. One, the size of the people in the photographs compared to the buildings, and two, the general style of this architecture. For those of you just listening, sorry, holy crap. Is that a photograph? Okay, I don't know what to say about that. That looks like a painting to me. That can't be a photograph. It's too beautiful. That looks like a painting. If that's a photograph, I would need to see proof that that's a photograph. These are paintings. Looks like a painting. The ornateness of the architecture cannot be overstated. All right, here we go. According to mainstream history, all 690 acres of such buildings were made from temporary building material. I personally don't buy that cover story, but even if that were the case, what would it take to build all of it, considering that they didn't have cranes or cars or any other form of modern construction equipment, allegedly? Something very fishy is going on indeed. Almost all of these buildings were demolished. There were many other fairs as well, such as in Buffalo, New York in 1901, San Francisco in 1915, smack dab in the middle of World War I, and a great many others. Every single one of these fairs comes with the same cover story, that they were built quickly and then demolished quickly. In some cases, a few buildings were left standing, such as the Palace of Fine Arts from the San Francisco Fair, and these buildings clearly were not made of temporary material. For the most part, these fairs boasted the same style of architecture, traces of which can be found all over the world. If one simply does a search for Tartarian architecture, then one will see such architecture has existed in almost every major city, much of which has been bulldozed, demolished, etc. Related styles of architecture would tend to include Gilded Age mansions, Beaux-Arts, and to a lesser degree, Art Deco. Almost every major city once had these majestic buildings, and almost all of them have been destroyed. You can simply search Tartarian architecture plus the name of any city, and you will see what I'm talking about. To thicken the plot even further, it is reported that Tesla provided electricity that powered the Chicago World's Fair. Here is a picture of the Chicago Fair of 1893, which, remember, spanned a whopping 690 acres, fully illuminated at nighttime. Now, here's where things start to get very interesting. Tesla's family hails from the very same part of the world where the wolf cult and Tartaria were said to be located. Tesla's grandfather on his mother's side was a priest of the Eastern Orthodox Church right at the time when that general region of the world was called Tartaria. Melania Trump's family, interestingly enough, also comes from this general area. The Tartaria-Tesla-Trump connection. Before continuing, let's recap what we've learned thus far. 1. There are examples of Tartarian architecture all over the world. 2. The heart of Tartaria was present-day Russia, Ukraine, Eastern Europe. 3. The same general region of the world is also where the werewolf death cult originates. 4. Tesla's family and Melania Trump's family also hails from this general region. Tesla's father reportedly had a massive library, and Nikola Tesla spent much of his childhood reading his father's books. If Tartaria was the advanced civilization many believe that it was, then it would follow that Tesla would have acquired knowledge of that Tartarian technology. And if that's the case, then much of that knowledge probably ended up in the hands of Donald Trump's uncle, John Trump, who, as an aside, is a spitting image of Julian Assange. Considering the above, is it not interesting that the Trump family seem to have an affinity for similar styles of architecture as reportedly existed in Tartaria? Featured here. I'm assuming this is a Trump room, and it is Tartarian as hell. To really drive the point home, Trump owns a hotel and casino in Atlantic City he named Trump World's Fair. The ancient origin of modern war. In light of everything you've read, I have a mind-blowing question to ask. When the mainstream media calls Trump a Russian agent, does the very word Russia mean what we think it means? Everyone assumes, and naturally so, that the mainstream media have been talking about the literal country known as Russia. To be sure, I'd assume that most of their employees also believe this, but in any event, it doesn't matter what the functionaries at any given mainstream media company think. What matters are the people in charge of writing the narratives in the first place. What do they mean when they call Trump a Russian agent? Hear me out. What if Russia and Ukraine are comms that refer to Tartaria and the wolf cult, respectively? If that were the case, then the concept of Trump being a Russian agent suddenly takes on a whole new meaning. Perhaps all this time, the truth is that Trump really is an agent, so to speak, of ancient Tartaria, or whatever it is that people popularly call Tartaria. Is it possible that the present-day Russia-Ukraine war has its origin in an ancient conflict between the dark occultists and werewolf cult versus Tartaria. Would that not explain why all of this Tartaria stuff blew up on the internet when Trump took office? The fact that Tartaria and flat Earth are so closely associated to each other in the alternative media strongly suggests that someone wants Tartarian info to be discredited. Indeed, to discredit important information by associating it with ridiculous information is one of the oldest disinfo tricks in the book. For the record, I do not believe the Earth is flat, though there are several researchers who do hold that opinion and whose work I nonetheless admire greatly, but that's all beside the point. Russian agents revisited. Remember, it was a Russian man who gave us the Werewolf game, which made it significantly easier to demonstrate to average people how information warfare actually works. He could have chosen any name he wanted, but he went with Werewolf. Trump, a so-called Russian agent, has likewise played a major role in helping the masses come to wake up to the existence of the deep state. You know who else is revealing much to the world about the deep state and the ancient cult behind it? That would be Vladimir Putin, another Russian agent, if you will, who recently told the world that, quote, for centuries the cult got used to stuffing their stomachs with human flesh and their pockets with money. But they must realize that this ball of vampires is coming to an end. End quote. When Putin calls them vampires, I'm certain he's talking about one and the same cult that I've been talking about, which is likely the same cult that is variously called the Illuminati, the NWO, Satanists, Luciferians, the Babylonian Brotherhood, etc., by popular culture. Parting words. There is so much more to say about all of this, but unfortunately, if I were to put the entire thing together in one article, then it would be so long that almost no one would read it. Though what I've discovered is by no means a theory of everything about history, Trump, Q, the Great Awakening, and so on. The fact of the matter is that we must start to look into the strange and the ancient factors at play in the current information war. The ancient werewolf cult indeed holds certain occult and supernatural beliefs that need to be researched and understood. Rest assured that much more will be said about them in the very near future. As Sun Tzu once said, you must know yourself and your enemy as well. Unfortunately, as it stands, we, the people, have been deeply studied by the cult, while at the same time, the masses have no clue at all about the cult. This is a huge problem, and perhaps always has been. Things are going to get scary in the next article. But have no fear, because we really do have what it takes to extricate our world from evil. Mainstream media propaganda wouldn't be necessary if there were no hope. To those who are willing to contemplate the extraordinary and do so in a sober-minded way for the purpose of serving others, I salute you. Stay tuned for more American Hypnotist. Signing off. Wonderful article. American Hypnotist, the world is flat. It's completely provable. I totally get coming out as a flat earther is unpleasant. And you don't have to. I'm not gonna flat-splain, but yeah, the fact that you respect the work of flat earthers is good enough for me. So, what do you say we go ahead? First, guys, go to epicminerals.net. That's epicminerals.net. I wanted epicminerals.com, but it's not available. Zeolite Extra. The effects are amazing. Detoxify from the heavy metals that are in everything, and then remineralize with humic and fulvic acid, all in one brilliant compound, manufactured by a Badlander. I've already taken my dose today, so I'm not going to overdo it. But anyway, go to epicminerals.net and use promo code Shapiro to pry a dollar from my grasping hands. Your body will thank you. All right, now we go to Eric Carlson in his personal Substack, erikc.substack.com. DJT puts Yahoo Finance into damage control. A Substack short. This is not financial advice, just an observation. What I'm about to say should surprise no one. Everything the media says is somewhere between a full lie and a gross manipulation of the truth. This includes the investment media. This morning, I caught a clip of 4 pretentious snobs from Yahoo Finance basically laughing at Trump's stock DJT that went public on the NASDAQ on Tuesday. They were calling it a meme stock, meaning it lacks fundamentals, and anyone who invests in it is basically throwing away their money. They've done the same thing with Bitcoin in the past, which is up 155% in the last year. These talking heads could barely contain their laughter when talking about Trump's stock that adds between $4 to $6 billion to his net worth. The article that accompanied the clip called Trump's added net worth paper money. You see, when any other stock goes up, they call it growth, but when Trump's stock goes up, it's called paper money. I should probably take a step back and explain that DJT is Trump Media, which merged with DWAC, a stock that was basically collecting money to merge with Trump Media at some point in the future. DWAC took off a couple of years ago when it became known that it was going to be the vehicle from which Trump Media would be funded. DWAC has suffered for over 2 years because the SEC, the organization that regulates Wall Street, was blocking the merger from happening. Why would they block the merger, which entered uncharted waters when it comes to regular corruption? They were blocking it to keep Trump from getting his money. On Friday, the merger finally went through, and DJT has since shot up in stock price, exactly what the deep state doesn't want to happen. DWAC actually started to go up following the Iowa caucus in January, when it became apparent Trump would become the Republican nominee. So now the smear campaign begins. DJT is a meme stock, and anyone who invests in it is simply a fool. But Nvidia, on the other hand, is a solid investment in their eyes. The 550% growth since the artificial intelligence nonsense started being pushed when ChatGPT went public 15 months ago is smart investing. Nvidia, whose price is 75 times earnings, for reference, ExxonMobil is 12 times earnings. In general, 5 to 10 times earnings is a really good value. 11 to 15 is a good value. 20 times earnings is okay. Anything over 25 times earning could be considered very overpriced. 75 times earnings is on another level of a stock being valued way more than the company produces. Price to earnings isn't everything when it comes to investing, but I think you get my point. Here's the process. First, the corrupt within Wall Street tried to force the price of DWAC down when it first went live. Then the corrupt SEC refused to allow the merger to go through with DWAC and Trump Media. This not only kept the stock price down, but it kept Trump from getting the money investors wanted to give to him. Now that DJT is shooting up in value, the smear campaign begins. The corrupt on Wall Street will likely continue to try to sabotage the stock price of DJT. The media will likely continue to ridicule the stock. But at some point, big investors who already seem to understand Trump will live in the White House again will try to get on Trump's good side. I invested in your stock. I'm not like the others who tried to ruin you. Please, Mr. Trump. Please, Mr. Trump. The begging for mercy will be glorious. And that's my friend Eric Carlson. That's Eric, ERIKC, ERIKC, at Substack.com. From Emerald Robinson. It's emerald.tv. If Trump wins in November, you'll need cigars. Why not prepare to celebrate victory in 2024 with these special smokes? Oh, God, I'm so sorry. She's just advertising cigars. I didn't realize it wasn't an article. I was looking forward to doing that one too. Okay, what am I going to do next? Let's do a poem from Claude Bernardin. This is entitled American Shades. Claude W. Bernardin. Sometimes you have to improvise to keep the world at bay. Sometimes you can't find your way to home, so tomorrow's another day. He hides among his shadowed books whose laws and history have gone gray, and covers his yellowed, cracked window panes in musty flags for shades. A star or two has fallen by, torn out of ink blue sky, but still the sunlight breaks the space like a knife-glint slice of hope. He prays, he prays, he prays, he prays. That is Claude Bernardin, the poet laureate of Reading Epic Threads. Okay, so I think I'll just wrap up the show. Why not? Hang on a second. You know what? There's another short from Eric Carlson, so I'm going to do that one. Yeah, I didn't realize that Emerald Robinson was just schlepping cigars, and I'm not going to schlep cigars. I schlep things that are good for you. All right, so from ericc.substack.com, Boston Marathon bombing 10th anniversary. I can't believe I once believed the narrative, by Eric Carlson. And this is back from April 19th, 2023. I obviously didn't do this one, so might as well do it now. Does anyone find it strange how our country was terrified of Muslim extremists for roughly 20 years? Then one day it just kind of stopped. It started in the late 90s, maybe earlier, but let's call it the mid to late 90s. Then one day, Muslim extremists were no longer a major concern. Let's call the last day of their reign of terror January 20th, 2017. Gee, I wonder who was inaugurated on that day. Let's go back a little further. The fall of the Soviet Union in the early 90s. We were to believe that one day a bunch of angry people with sledgehammers just started destroying the Berlin Wall, and none of the snipers seemed to care. None of the military did anything to stop them. We are to believe this wasn't a staged event. By the way, as soon as the Soviet Union fell, wokeism immediately entered U.S. universities. Back then, it was called being politically correct. Wokeism has always been a communist plot to take down the U.S. from within, slowly pushed on us so we wouldn't notice. The communists knew they couldn't defeat the U.S. from the outside. The U.S. military was too powerful. The U.S. economy was too strong, so the Soviet Union disbanded, and the operation became covert. With the disbanding of the Soviet Union, the military-industrial complex needed a new enemy. How else could they sell weapons and start wars? They settled on Muslim extremists. For 20 years, these Muslim extremists were used to push fear and control on the U.S. and the world. From Clinton to Bush to Obama, Muslim extremists were the new boogeyman. And not only that, but that since that nice Muslim neighbor of yours could just someday snap, be radicalized, or so we were led to believe. Most reading this probably know ISIS was created and funded by Obama and John McCain. So this shouldn't be too shocking. On April 15th, 2013, it was Patriots' Day in Boston. Also, the running of the Boston Marathon. On this day, about 5 hours into the race, near the finish line, 2 pressure cooker bombs went off. 3 people died and hundreds were injured. This set off a massive manhunt to find the perpetrators. 3 days later, photos of the assailants were released, as well as the name of 2 brothers. The older was named Tamerlan Tsarnaev, and the younger was Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. These brothers were Chechen, Kyrgyzstani Americans, and also Muslims. Thousands of law enforcement officers were in the Boston area to help apprehend these suspected terrorists and bring them to justice. On the 18th, the 2 brothers killed an MIT University police officer in his squad car. The metropolitan area was put on complete lockdown. No one was to leave their homes. This was an unprecedented act, something not seen before, until COVID, of course. After murdering the police officer, the brothers carjacked a car, but they didn't kill the owner, nor did they kick him out of the car. They kept him in the car. Strange to say the least. They let him drive around with them. Later, the car owner fled while they were getting gas, and he called the police. The car owner just happened to memorize the GPS tracking code of his new car, something no one does. The police were immediately able to track down the brothers to a neighborhood, and a shootout began. Hundreds of rounds were shot. Bullet holes littered the houses in the neighborhood. The older brother was shot several times and was was run over by the younger brother as he escaped the scene in the stolen car. The older brother later died in an ambulance. It's strange how many people die in ambulances. It reminds me of Princess Diana. The stolen car was later abandoned in the Watertown neighborhood, and a door-to-door search began. The law enforcement officers searched 20 square blocks with no success. Then a homeowner called into the police to say someone was hiding in his boat in his backyard, and there was blood all over the white, cream-colored boat cover. Hundreds of cops flooded the area. While the leaders were deciding how to proceed, one of the cops heard a sound that caused him to start firing his weapon, which led to hundreds of rounds being shot by multiple cops. Bullet holes were found all over the houses on the block. Luckily, no one was injured or killed. Badly injured from the earlier shootout, the younger brother eventually came out of the boat, gave up, and was arrested. We were told the brothers committed this heinous act of violence as retaliation to the Iraq and Afghan war, as well as overall mistreatment of Muslims. We were told they acted alone, and the older brother was radicalized from a trip he made a year prior to the small country of Dagestan on the Caspian Sea. Case closed. Just another act of Muslim extremist violence. Honestly, if this occurred today rather than 10 years ago, I would have figured out it was a false flag event orchestrated by the FBI, CIA in maybe 5 minutes. When it occurred 10 years ago, I got goosebumps as the crowds chanted USA, USA as the younger brother was being arrested. When this event occurred, it brought not only the city of Boston together, but the whole nation, united under a false flag event. Last week, Netflix released a 3-part documentary on the event. It was a reminder to me of how far removed from believing the agendas I've become. The documentary doesn't appear to be pushing any agendas, not trying to prove it occurred exactly the way it occurred or vice versa. I don't know what their motivation was for releasing the documentary. Maybe it left out or added some important information or disinformation. But the thing about lies is the more you talk about a lie, the more it reveals itself as being a lie. And the mainstream media narrative is most certainly a lie. Mind you, false flags doesn't mean people aren't hurt or killed. It just means the situation was orchestrated or manipulated in some way. After watching the documentary, I was reminded of some inconsistencies with the situation. When interviewing people who knew the younger brother, everyone, to a person, said he wasn't an angry person. He wasn't overly religious, never spoke of a disdain for the American government or the mistreatment of Muslims. He was very well assimilated into America. He played basketball and played video games and smoked pot with his friends. He was social and liked. Even after recognizing him in the pictures released, no one spoke out and said it was him. They thought there was no way it could have been him, even though they recognized the picture as being him. When the older brother went to Dagestan a year prior, when he was said to be, quote, radicalized, there is no evidence that this radicalization occurred. He hung out on the beach with his friends. None of them seemed to be radicalized. Yet, when he got home to America, we are led to believe he was a different person, completely radicalized. Prior to the bombing, 3 of the older brother's friends were murdered in their apartment. After it was discovered that Tamerlan was one of the bombers and now dead, a person was said to come forward confessing to killing the 3 friends with Tamerlan. We were told when the FBI came to arrest the man who voluntarily confessed to the murders, he suddenly lunged at the FBI agents and they were forced to kill him. Just so you get this straight, the FBI agents claimed the man confessed. Then immediately after, they were forced to kill him. What is the saying? Dead men tell no tales. Another oddity. After the younger brother abandoned the stolen car, care to guess how far away from this car he was found in the boat? 1 block. Thousands of cops combed the neighborhood looking for him, and no one noticed a boat with a blood-soaked, light-colored boat over a block away. Not parked in a garage, but out in the open. You could see the boat from the street. It's astonishing what we are capable of accepting. I feel comfortable saying this was a false flag event. People were hurt and even killed. I feel comfortable saying this was orchestrated by the FBI, CIA, to push an agenda and possibly create a distraction. I don't know what bad Obama policy or scandal this might have been distracting us from. I suppose I should look into it, or someone else could. I would not be surprised to find out the brothers were brainwashed by the CIA to commit these acts of violence, or at least radicalized by the CIA, probably both. Like in so many other CIA patsy situations, backstories were created and the American public was traumatized. Then, after the fact, when people started to question the facts, fake CIA created conspiracy theories were created to discredit the people questioning the narrative. Fake CIA conspiracy theories like no one really died, or amputee crisis actors were used to appear they lost limbs in the bombing. They do this with many mass killings, muddy the water, make people who are onto the scent seem crazy. As I write this, a 21-year-old low-level Air Force reservist has been arrested for leaking documents to high school kids in a Minecraft chat room. Yes, we are really supposed to believe this. I didn't fall for this narrative for even a minute. He is obviously being used as a patsy by the FBI and CIA. How much longer before no one believes the lies anymore? That day can't come soon enough. And that is the latest from the brilliant Eric Carlson. Check him out at ERIKC, ericc.substack.com. American Hypnotist. Check that out at badlands.substack.com. I cannot wait for the next in the Werewolf series. Check that out. And guys, don't forget to go to epicminerals.net. epicminerals.net. If I could ever get it to focus on the label that we created. There it is. Zeolite Extra with humic and fulvic acids, the safest and most effective detox product available. epicminerals.net, promo code Shapiro to pry $1 from my grasping hands. Let us pray. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow.
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.